And welcome to the Weather Insights podcast. I'm meteorologist Scott Pitney, along with meteorologist Jeff Lindner. Jeff, happy New Year 2024. Welcome.
Yeah, 2024. Yes, sir.
Did you have a good holiday?
I did.
Did you do anything fun?
Well, we spent a few days in New Orleans after Christmas before the bowl game. Saw a lot of UT fans there.
I'll bet.
Yeah,
I'll bet.
UT fans.
But did they? I'm sure they outnumbered the Washington fans.
Oh, absolutely.
Quite a
Well,
bit.
as far as I noticed.
Yeah, except on the scoreboard, but
well, it was close.
It was close. They had their chance, and yeah. But you gonna watch the game tonight?
Yeah.
I think a lot of people I've talked to, since the horns aren't in, they're kind of protesting, and but they'll watch it.
They're
just talking.
It's interesting. It's almost like the same thing that happened during the the Final Four.
Yeah.
I think what was it? U of H was in it, and then
yeah,
they got knocked out, and everything.
Yeah.
I don't know. I first I thought the two games were really good.
Yeah.
They were excellent games, and of course we have the Texans.
Yeah.
That
must win
for playoffs.
They win the next 5 games, they win the Super Bowl. Now that's a sports stat for you.
Baby steps. We got to get through. We got to get through the game on. We got to get through the Saturday game first.
Right.
The Colts.
Yeah. So what would Weather Insights be without starting off with sports? It's kind of been a theme lately.
Maybe we should pivot over to sports. Yeah.
Yeah, we could do that. You think we'll get more guests, maybe some more sponsors that way?
It seems to be a big thing. There seems to be a lot of sports podcasts.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there are a few of those. And
controversial too. Very controversial.
Oh, yeah. Very emotional.
Especially this week.
Yeah, you don't hear people getting mad too many times on weather podcasts. But those sports podcasts, yeah, they throw some vinegar sometimes. Anyway, well, yeah, so today we're going to talk about weather eventually, and where would you like to start? You want to talk about a year in review, like so many people like to do this time of year?
I mean, why not? We got to be like everybody else. I mean, we got to.
Yeah, let's not get outside the lines too much on this show. Oh, look at that! It just so happens I have a link up. Oh, except our viewers can't see it because I haven't shared the screen yet. So let me do that, and. Here we go.
This is a low budget production.
The part out about you messing around with the screen was it really that long? It was annoying.
Yeah, I just edit the whole first part of it out.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, let me get us out of the way so we can read the whole thing. And so we're talking mainly Houston, Galveston, since that's where we're based. But we know we have listeners all over the world, I'm sure. So don't get offended if we're not talking about your area. But, this was the drought in Texas was definitely national news. It was worth something to talk about because there were just so many records. And you posted something yesterday. I think, was it 406 total records?
Wow.
And compared to the next number was like 280 or something, or if I remember right, records. I mean, that is just a ton of records.
Yeah, and I have some statistics, and we're talking about the heat.
Yeah,
this past summer, and if you look back at 2023, what are the top 4 or 5 weather events? Well, the heat and the drought are probably definitely up there. But for high temperature records, and this is just at College Station, Houston, Intercontinental, Hobby, and Palacios and Galveston. So those 4 sites, we set 153 high temperature records, 153. And we set at those same sites 234 high temperature low records. Now that makes any sense. It's the highest low temperature ever recorded. And most of those were set at Palacios and Hobby. So it was it was not only hot during the afternoon, it was hot overnight.
Right. So yeah, and that's a criteria that National Weather Service uses, the high low temperature. So if the low that particular evening is 80 degrees, I think is the threshold for one of those advisories that they.
Well, that's for the heat advisory.
Heat advisory, right.
Heat advisory.
Right.
But if the previous low was 79 on that date in the period of record, and then today it's 80, that's a new
Right.
high-low record,
Right.
because
Yeah.
that's not confusing. Um, but it's also, and this is probably the biggest thing, because so many of us remember 2011
Yeah.
and how miserable 2011 was.
Yeah.
But 2023 is now the hottest year on record for College Station, Intercontinental, Houston, and Palacios. So that beat 2011, which is just insane to me, because I don't know. I guess heat's heat. And then Galveston came in at the 2023 was the third warmest year on record. So, we beat all that. Highest maximum temperature 112 at College Station, 109 at both Intercontinental and Hobby. Now that's pretty impressive at Hobby, since you're a little bit closer down to the bay.
Right.
And even Galveston was 101 for their maximum high temperature in 2023.
That doesn't happen often.
No, it does not.
Mm.
And another record that we set just recently is we didn't have a freeze.
Right.
We have not had a freeze at Intercontinental in 2023.
Got close, closing out the year.
Yeah, we got 33 on
Yep.
December 11th
Yep.
and on February the 18th, but no 32.
Mhm.
And this is the first time this has happened since 1956.
Mm.
And if you go back to weather records, we've only had 3 other times. This would be the fourth, 2023, that we have not had a freeze in Houston. And so that was 1906, 1931, 1956. And then there's 2023.
Yeah.
And so on average, it's usually we get to freezing 11 days at Intercontinental. I'm saying Houston. There's different, there's Tomball, there's Houston, there's Hobby. These are official reporting sites. And so all this is at Intercontinental. And of course, that site, I think, has been around since 1969, if I'm not mistaken. And so take it for what it's worth.
Yeah, they used to take the official measurements downtown, and then they moved it out to Intercontinental. Was it 69?
I think so. Might have been earlier a little bit. It was in the 60s. I know that.
Yeah. Okay. What do you think about that? I mean, that's just
what do I think about
moving our official records that far north. That's almost like, to me, like a different climate.
Well, let's see. I think we were downtown, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so when you moved out to where Bush is in 1960, whatever, you were out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
And so this gets into this whole debate about are you skewing the temperature climate record, because as urbanization occurs around your climate site, you get the urban heat island effect, you have more concrete and all that type of stuff, especially in exactly what we're talking about, the overnight low temperatures. And so, yes, it's a factor, but I don't really know how you get away from it or stop it.
I don't. I mean, most of the people. The argument is most of the people are, of course, centered around the central part of the city. So that's there's a fair argument for the records should be made there, because that's where most of the people are. But then again, you've got, because you brought up the heat island effect too, you have to get your instruments high enough, where you're not getting friction or blockage or anything like that. And then you get your instruments too high, and then you're into another zone where you're really not getting accurate what people are actually feeling on ground level. Yeah. So
and one of the important things to understand is we have sites like this at airports for a reason, is because it's used for aviation.
Yeah.
So aircraft need to know the temperature, they need to know the wind direction, the wind speed, and all that. And so you have an on-site weather station at a lot of airports. There's no airport downtown. And so besides a bunch of people live there, there's no actual reason, I guess, to have one in the urban core. And so that people, why do you have, they're at the airports because the aviation folks use them heavily for all the stuff that goes into weather with aviation and all that kind of stuff. And so it's kind of it's a pretty big deal. Now, could you add them elsewhere? Yes, but it probably gets into a funding and a maintenance thing.
Plus, the airports, the spaces are wide open. You don't have anything interfering with the data. You just don't have the concrete like you have in the center of the city. So
What was number two? I think it was the tornado, right? I think
Yeah, the F3.
that's what the weather. This is the Weather Service, the
EF3,
Houston
excuse me.
Galveston list
Yeah.
that they came up with, and yeah. I mean, I guess the tornado back. This was the tornado back in January in the southeast part of the county. So it started just south of Houston, right along the Beltway, west of 45, and then moved through Pasadena, Pasadena Deer Park, and then kind of fizzled out on the northwest side of Baytown. And so, it was a big tornado for us in the whole scheme of things. Um, a pretty long tracked tornado. We typically don't have tornadoes down here that track that long. I think it was 20 something, 21, 22 miles. It was rated an EF3, and I did participate in the damage survey on this with the Weather Service. And most of the damage was low end. Most of it was EF0, EF1, a lot of tree damage, fence damage, shingle damage. And then there were certain spots, I guess isolated would be a good term, where we had some of that EF2 and EF3 damage. I think the EF3 damage was in one section right on the south side of the ship channel, with some high tension towers that were knocked down. And generally speaking, they can withstand winds of 130, 140. And so that's kind of where that EF3 rating came from, but it was in one small portion. And so I don't want everybody to think they got hit with an EF3 tornado.
Right.
The majority of the damage was rated well below that. And something like 700 homes received damage, and most of that was in LaPorte and Deer Park. Yeah, so we kind of forget that this time of year we can have severe weather along the Gulf Coast. This is kind of a secondary severe weather peak for us down here. And we can, get tornadoes and severe weather and that type of stuff. But this was certainly a bigger tornado than what we're used to. And I think the bigger, some of the big stuff that came out of it was the first tornado emergency was ever issued in this area, was issued for this event. And so, and those products are reserved for the most dangerous of situations. And I know that when the thinking was going on when this was happening, A, these storms moving fast, B, it was a typical January, low clouds, fog, a lot of rain. You could not see anything. This was heavily wrapped in rain. You could not see it coming. And so there was no visual that there was actually a tornado on the ground. The tornado emergency was all issued based on what the radar was showing. And there was a significant debris signature that the radar was showing as it kind of came across I-45 and then in toward the Pasadena area. And so that's when the Weather Service decided on the tornado emergency. It was very fast. These were minutes from the time the tornado warning came out to the time they went to the emergency. We're talking minutes.
Yeah.
And so very, very fast decision making having to happen based on just the tools you have without seeing anything. A lot of times for tornado emergency in other areas, you see it. You see it on there's storm chasers, there's video, the social media pictures, there's video, there's cameras on highways. You actually see there's a big, large tornado going towards a populated area, and that's when typically the tornado emergency is used. There's no shortage of any of that here, except the fact that the thing was completely shrouded in rain. And you just didn't see it. It was just a big old honking mess of rain and wind that came through that southeast part of the county.
Yeah, I think the first tornado warnings started going off around 11 o'clock that morning for the western side.
Yep.
And I was in an area, I was in Katy at the time, and I heard that tornado warning. So I was visually trying to, verify, and didn't see anything, just like you pointed out. Then not too long after, a few hours after that, somebody posted a funnel cloud right over Buc-ee's on I-10. And I was probably a mile and a half, 2 miles from there. Couldn't see it. But yeah, good point. Listen to your weather service, especially tornado emergencies, like you pointed out, they're issued so infrequently, because that's exactly, tornado debris. When you see that on radar, most people don't have access to that kind of stuff. So when the Weather Service sees that, that means a lot. So that's good that we have that tool. Number 3, June 21st, Harris County severe thunderstorm. This was recorded a record wind that we had never seen, even during Ike. It broke that record of 82. That is some pretty serious wind.
Yep, I remember this pretty well. It was kind of a question of if we were going to get storms that afternoon. It got very warm. Of course, the whole summer was warm, but it got very warm that afternoon, and these storms came kind of straight out of North Texas, right down 45. In this particular instance, it just, the storm kind of collapsed as it came through the woodlands and then right into northern Harris County there. 1960 45 Hardy Toll Road, Intercontinental Airport was just hammered. I mean, just, frequent gust of 80, 90, 100 miles an hour. You do that in an urban area with the pine trees that we have on the north side, and you're going to have all kinds of problems. And that's exactly what we had. I think we had 300,000 without power. And in some cases, this was an extended power outage, 3, 4, 5 days without power. And again, the summer was miserably hot. So it was not nice with those power outages. But yeah, record 97 miles an hour at the airport, beating Ike. And
and I remember this radar image. That's a good image because, bringing on the west side or northwest side of town, I was watching because for a while it looked like everybody was going to get some, but then, like you pointed out, it just sort of broke off this chunk and went kind of on the northeast side and kind of fizzled out. I mean, we still got heavy rain and wind, but nothing like they got up at the airport. Yeah. Spring 80 miles an hour, Woodland 70, Tomball 62, even Cobb Field 61, and then by the time it got to Hobby 51. But I wonder if that was the last cool day we had in the summer.
Well, that was in the evening after we had. I want to say we got up to around 100 that day, and a lot of times in the summertime when you get these disturbances coming in from the north or northeast, they come into that superheated air mass late in the day, after 5 or 6 o'clock toward the evening, and they just feed on that heat and humidity that we're sitting out here baking in. And this is and a lot of times it's wind. It's that the cool air rushes out from these storms. It's 70 against 100-degree temperatures ahead of it, so you have a 30-degree contrast, and it just helps accelerate that wind out of these storms. And so anytime in the summer we have something coming from us from the north or northeast or east, in the afternoon and evening, you got to watch out for big wind.
Yeah. I remember watching this system early in the afternoon in Oklahoma, I think is where it originated. Maybe even further north. That's just when I started watching. And I started looking at models and everything. It just kept it coming down. Like, wow, that's a long path for a storm in the summer. You usually expect something like that with a front or whatever. But that was a very memorable day. On to number 4, the Huntsville downburst, May 23rd.
I don't remember this, so
unfortunately 2 fatalities.
I don't.
Yeah, isolated. Well, that's definitely kind of getting to the end of prime time severe weather season for us. But
I mean, just looking at the radar image, it looks like it was an isolated cell. Again, probably collapsed. The thunderstorm was collapsing and produces downburst. And
it's not what I would call a classic supercell by any means, but it's got some pretty high tops there on the right side of that cell. So I don't remember too much about that either. Then another June event, the Brazos destructive thunderstorm. Again, this is kind of a faint memory for me, but do you remember this one?
No.
Okay. Sorry, Brazos. We don't have much to go on, but that's actually even more of an impressive radar.
Well, it looks like it was pretty busy up northwest, and then it kind of skipped over the central part, 59 corridor, and then we had a lot of wind reports at the coast, which isn't surprising. But No, I don't. I don't.
Yeah.
It must have been, maybe I was asleep.
Yeah. Well, anyway, those were the major events for 23. Of course, heat being, you brought up 2011. I think, and that one sticks out to me too, and 1980. But I think 11, it's the Bastrop fires for me that just, and I know we had a lot of fires this year or in 23 with this summer, but we didn't have anything like Bastrop.
No.
Just a lot of fires, and I know you follow that stuff pretty close, but
We did. We had fire this year, but it was not the gravity of the fires we had in 11. So it was more of these 1, 5, 10 acre grass brush fires that we could contain. Back in 11, it was 10,000 acres.
Yeah.
Fires that burned for weeks, and we had some of this in Louisiana this year. We had multiple very large 50, 60,000 acre fires that got up into the pines in Louisiana, especially Western Louisiana, and caused all kind of problems. And so, I think we talked about this back in the fall. We were kind of right there. We just didn't have the wind to when the fire got going to get it really going. And so the suppression efforts, the firefighting efforts, were able to knock these things back pretty quick and keep them small and contained, versus back in 11 when we had, particularly for the weekend of the Bastrop Labor Day weekend, we had very strong wind because of a tropical system making landfall to our east. And when you get fire and 40-mile-an-hour winds, there's not a whole lot you can do.
Right.
Especially when it's as dry as it is.
Yeah.
And we were just really fortunate we did not have the wind.
Yeah.
And the fires were small. But if you want to, know how it could have went, you just cross the border, and they had big fires in Western Louisiana, and even up until Thanksgiving, fires around the New Orleans area. As a matter of fact, when I was there last week, they had a fire. It's still very dry over in Louisiana, Mississippi.
Yeah, I was gonna.
And one thing about the fires over there is when you get that fire in the marsh, and it kind of burns underground-ish, kind of, and burns in areas where you can't really get to it. And so they had a big fire there before Thanksgiving, I think it was, that mixed with the smoke and the fog. Excuse me, and caused that big accident around New Orleans.
Yeah, and we've obviously talked a lot about the drought around here, which is still there, but getting better. We're already a couple inches of rain into the new year, so that all helps. But Louisiana, they've had their issues over there for sure. And you're talking about New Orleans, boy, right around there, still bad, still D4. So yeah. Well, hopefully Mother Nature will balance herself this year. So that's what we can talk about now. We've been talking about the past. Let's talk about the future a little bit. And Alex, we're still in a pretty healthy El Nino, I would say.
Yeah, we're in it, but we're not. Up until this week, we haven't seen the response here in Texas that you would expect with an El Nino.
Yeah, I think every month that when I started looking at climate forecast, when El Nino was kicking in, I think we've still been under our monthly rain totals for November and December. Like you said, we're just not in line with what we typically expect. I mean, it's changed. It's gotten better as far as, we're getting some regular rain now. The fronts are moving through and all that, which you would expect this time of year anyway. But yeah, not overly. We're not getting as much rain as we would expect. So, but you look at these outlooks, and I don't know, they've kind of backed off the rain a little bit. I think for the South, you still see a lot in Florida. Temperatures a little bit warmer up north, you'd expect that, but pretty neutral conditions as far as precipitation for us, it looks like over the next few months. So now they're saying, El Nino should weaken by maybe May or something like that. I feel like that's pretty quick. That's a pretty quick El Nino cycle.
Yeah, it is. We've kind of in the last several years we've been in this multi-year El Nino La Nina pattern, and so, but yeah, it can. I mean, all the models show it weakening, at least going to neutral by the start of summer. So we'll see. This is sort of that time of year where these models struggle a little bit with the sea surfaces in the Pacific. So we'll see. I don't know quite yet if the pattern is gonna eventually connect here in Texas. We kind of had this parade of storms this week that's brought us what you would expect in El Nino. Every couple of days you get rain, and we've gotten decent rain last week.
Yeah.
But if you look forward, it doesn't really continue. The pattern breaks down again. The progressive southern stream kind of goes away a little bit, which potentially opens the door for some colder, which we haven't seen any of that either this year.
No.
I mean, it's been cool, but nothing like what it could be. I mean, again, we haven't hit freezing.
Just a few degrees under normal, but not anything major.
No, so we'll see. If I had to hedge, I would say we'll probably end up being near normal in the precipitation, maybe just a little bit above here in Southeast Texas, and probably near normal in the temperatures. We've been pretty normal since, I don't know, November, December.
Yeah.
On the temperature side of things, and so.
Yeah.
And then we'll just have to see. We'll just have to see what we get into later in the spring and the summer, because that's going to obviously play a big role in the 2024 hurricane season. And just so everybody knows out there, it is January, and all these people who are posting all this stuff about how horrible the hurricane season is going to be this year, it's January. We still have 6 months.
Yeah.
And a lot can change in 6 months. Now, yes, you can look at all kinds of stuff right now, and it all looks horrible.
Yeah.
It all looks like an active season in the Atlantic Basin. It doesn't mean Houston's going to get hit. I believe there was an article saying Houston's going to have one of the worst hurricane season ever, or something along those lines.
Oh, they specifically called out 2 areas in the United States. One was the Texas coastline and Florida, which, that's a given. But
well, the Texas coastline doesn't equate to Houston.
Right.
And that was my argument with the article, is a hurricane could go into Brownsville and it's sunny here. So
right.
Some of these headlines are getting out there.
Yeah.
And again, it's January. El Nino, La Nina will play a big part in the season. What are the sea surface temperatures going to be looking like in the Atlantic? Yeah, they're warm now, but things can change.
Yeah.
And so, I guess we'll cover this topic, I don't know, again.
Oh, I'm sure.
Maybe in next month, February.
Yeah.
We'll have to
get some hurricane people on here.
Deal with the hype machine.
Well, I only went back a couple of years. Didn't look at it too hard, but some of the predicted numbers for this year, and most of it was just based on the shift into a La Nina. But I, whatever the reason is, I went back and looked at the last couple of years, and what they predicted versus the actual numbers was not very much in alignment. But as I always like to say, what does it mean? I mean, does it mean we prepare any different? No. Preparation is still the same. Whether we're going to have a busy year or not.
Well, I don't think a whole lot of us are really thinking about hurricane season in January to begin with. And if you're going to produce a forecast in January, I can understand why your verification is not very good.
Yeah. Right.
So.
Right. And that's why I looked. I'm like, well, okay, there it is. Let's go see how it looked the last couple of years. And I didn't see a lot, but like you said, it's 6 months out. So we will have to see. All right. Speaking of social media, the 2 words I'm sure you've heard a lot too: polar vortex.
It's going to kill us all.
It sounds so ominous.
Does it?
Well, just vortex. Who wants to get caught in a vortex? I don't, and certainly don't want Santa and his reindeer to get caught in a polar vortex. That could be, a problem. So, polar vortex. I got something on this. Just maybe start off with the basics on what it is.
Well, it's nothing new,
Right.
as most weather is not.
Yeah.
But
New name, same
boy,
weather.
you would think it is.
Yeah.
Between the polar vortex and the sudden stratospheric warming event, SSWE,
Yeah.
because that's the other big words being thrown around.
Mm.
And the polar vortex, the it's just it's a region up around the Arctic Circle that keeps the cold air kind of locked up in that part of the world. And so it's a wind flow, and it has some emphasis on the jet stream configuration. And so when the polar vortex is strong, like it has been in November and December, it creates a jet stream that tends to move west to east across the nation. And so you get flooded here in the lower 48 with west to east flow of Pacific air.
Mm-hmm.
So it's mild. This winter has been mild.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you go, here's been kind of normal. But if you go up north to Chicago or the Dakotas or somewhere like that where they can, be -50, I mean, it's been mild winter. It's been way above average.
Mm-hmm.
And so what can happen is when that polar vortex breaks down. I got that old cough that everybody has.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get it out.
So aren't we all trying?
Yeah.
So when that polar vortex breaks down or slows down or potentially splits, it can cause the jet stream that is what we call zonal west to east to become more amplified, or north to south.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have that north to south configuration, that jet stream can go up north of Alaska into the Arctic Circle, possibly even over into northern Siberia, northern Russia, and bring that cold air across the poles and potentially into the United States. Now, every time the polar vortex slows down or splits doesn't mean the U.S. is going to have an Arctic outbreak. It's not going to be February 21.
Mm-hmm.
And so, this whole emphasis on the polar vortex is a little misleading, as most things are in weather.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing is, we're talking about something like you would. I liken January, late December through early February, like August and September in the hurricane season.
Mm-hmm.
It's always coming, right? It's always 14 or 20 days away.
Yeah,
and it's coming. It's going to be the worst hurricane. It's always out there in the models. And we've seen the same thing here recently with some of the deterministic model output, not the ensemble approach, but the deterministic, showing some cold Arctic air coming into the nation. And, it's kind of been a back and forth. Does it come down the plains, or does it go more towards the East Coast? And we get kind of a glancing blow in Texas, or does it even happen?
right.
And what was posted around the Christmas, New Year's time was the 672-hour CFS model, which is more of a climate model that looks way, way out into the future. And so it's not necessarily to be used for this. It's just to give you an idea of the trend, if you will, going way out. Now, why the heck we're posting 672-hour guidance, I have no idea.
Yeah.
Why we're even, why that's even available to people, I don't know. Because really anything past 5 to 6 days is kind of questionable.
Yeah.
So the takeaway from all this is we probably will get colder. No surprise, it's January.
Yeah. Good call.
We could have, some cold air come down. Is it anything that's significant? We'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah.
And it could be as early as, the 13th, 14th, 15th. These big storm systems that are going up from the southern plains up the Appalachians, eventually, if that cold air gets in the right spot, it'll pull some of that down the plains. But again, lows in the 30s here, lows in the upper 20s is not a big deal.
Yeah.
That's not a polar vortex, winter, freeze, whatever. Now, if we start talking about below 25 into the teens, okay, then we have something to talk about. But 30 degrees is not a big deal for us here.
Right. Are you a gardener by any chance?
I used to dabble.
Yeah.
I don't have time now.
Well, I think that's one of the big questions for our area, because as you know, we can be in the 70s one day and then in the 30s and 40s the next. And so people are When should I plant my garden? When's it safe? When's it not going to freeze?
You know what the rule of thumb is? When the pecan trees bud out and when the mesquites bud out.
Oh, well, there you go.
So
get a pecan tree first.
For all you gardeners out there.
Or find a pecan tree.
We don't have a lot of mesquites in this area, but we do have a fair amount of pecan trees. And if you look, they tend to be the last tree that leaves out, that comes out of dormancy. And the rule of thumb has always been in South Texas, when the mesquites leaf out, you're good to plant. And around here, when the pecans leaf out, you're good to plant. And I've learned a lot talking with farmers down the coastal bend, South Texas, and those areas. And it's not necessarily you get down to 30 or 31 or 32. It's if you get below that and you stay there for a period of time, that's when it can really cause damage. Now, if you're doing tomatoes or something like that, you're going to have an issue. But some of these other crops, and you know, what farmers plant and what you plant in your backyard are two different things. But I've come to realize it's not the light 1 or 2 hour freeze, it's the all night freeze that's more damaging to that type of stuff. And unfortunately around here, you know, we can freeze into March, even sometimes into early April if you just get a clear night with low dew points, dry air. I mean, we can radiate out and we can get down that cold. So yeah, we're talking. Don't do it. Don't plant yet.
Yeah.
We should still be in the cool season crop, broccoli and cabbage and.
Yeah. I like what you said on one of your posts too. When that night it got down to 33 or 34 or whatever, you said, you know, if you have tropical plants in nature, the ones that are highly sensitive, first of all, find out if your plant or whatever you're planting is highly sensitive to freezing.
I can't imagine most of us have anything after the last 2 winters left.
No.
Unless you replanted it, because most tropicals did not survive 21. And they were hit. If they did, they were hit again last December 22. So you know what most of us have left, unless you've gone and replanted everything, is relatively hardy or can sustain the light freezes around here. Now, if you went out and put hibiscus or any of that stuff back in, yeah, it can get damaged when you get down around 30, 31, 32.
Yeah. So there you go, everybody. Polar vortex. Don't be afraid of it.
Don't read into the hype.
Yeah. Use
I don't know.
Use trusted sources.
Well,
listen to our podcast.
Depends what the trusted sources is nowadays, because they're becoming. Never mind.
Yeah. So as I said earlier, all we can do is prepare. So the National Weather Service has this link, preparing for cold weather. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. You know, the 4 P's there, people, pets, pipes, plants, winterizing your home, you know, stuff you can do, you should do anyway. And that same for hurricane season too, stuff you can do way in advance. And a lot of these are just good tips anyway. I mean, just general home maintenance stuff. And having supplies and things like that, you know, do it before the news gets out and the hype gets out and everybody goes running to the store and you're fighting lines and all that. You know, a lot of the stuff you can get now and just put it in a box, mark it, put it somewhere, your garage, your attic, indoors, wherever it needs to go.
I mean, I think most of us we're probably more familiar right now with winterization after the last couple of years than hurricane preparation around here, because we haven't had a hurricane in forever. But you know what to do.
Yeah.
I mean, generally speaking, you know what to do. It's funny that what the Weather Service has listed here: caulk your windows, insulate your attic. I don't know anybody who's going to go out and do that right now, unless you're planning to do it anyways.
No.
But yeah, just, you know, outside pipes. You know, the biggest thing around here is the sprinklers, the backflow preventers. You know, again, most of them have already broke.
Yeah.
In the past few winters, so you've had them replaced. They can break again. Just because they're new doesn't mean anything.
Yep.
If they freeze, they'll break, and so make sure those things are drained, cut off, and drained, and wrapped. I cut mine off. I drain it and I wrap it, and I've never had an issue. Now I know other people who have, but those are probably the biggest things. That and the vegetation, and pets. I mean, but you know, bring your pets inside, or at least give them
absolutely
a place to stay warm. Livestock is another thing, especially if we get really cold. You know, livestock can can freeze to death.
Right.
And one of the biggest things with livestock is actually they dehydrate and die because their water sources freeze over. So like the stock ponds, the tanks, the water troughs, well, when it gets super cold, that all becomes ice, freeze over. That's what we saw in 21. All froze over. There was nowhere for them to get water.
Yeah.
So they can die of dehydration on top of the cold. And so
some of those tanks are pretty shallow based on the droughts. You know, they haven't filled up all the way. So that means they're going to freeze faster and stay frozen longer too. And going back to the pipe thing, Jeff was talking about, plenty of YouTube videos in case you don't know how to do all that stuff, draining your pipes and wrapping them and all that. Lots of YouTube videos, a good resource. I found that's what I use for taking care of mine. But yeah, just preparation. That's all you can do. Good preparation. Don't panic. Don't panic. It's going to be okay. Go through this every year.
It usually is.
Yeah. Anything else on your mind, sir? I know there's always a lot on your mind. I mean, stuff we can actually talk about.
Yeah. You know, there was something I was going to say and I forgot what it was, but it had to do something with this, and it'll come to me. But
with the winterizing,
yeah, it was something with winter.
Yeah, well, it'll come after we're, off. Yeah.
Guess it wasn't that important.
No, but yeah, we'll keep searching for guests that have good information, relevant information they can bring to the table, or just anybody. some in between.
Just anyone.
No, we'll be working on our guest list for 24. We're excited about our podcast coming up in 24, and
maybe I'll be done coughing by then.
Keeping y'all informed. Yeah, my turn's next. Knock on wood. I've been real lucky. It's the sickness has been all around me, but I've stayed ahead of it so far. So far, so good. But yeah, so winterize your homes. Be prepared. Don't be scared. And
be prepared. Don't be scared.
How about that?
Well, that's a new slogan. I haven't heard.
You like that?
Did you come up with that right now?
Just now. Should I copyright that?
That should be the title of the show. Be prepared. Don't be scared.
All right. So it is. Be prepared. Don't be scared.
It's the best thing that we talked about.
Well, I saved it for the last. Did you remember what you want?
No.
Okay.
It's gone.
Okay. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll see you on the next podcast. Have a good one.